For the next 5 or so days, I'm going to be posting videos that I think are competitive enough for you to climb the ladder. I've been hanging around at the bottom of Plat because I've been doing a lot of experimentation, but I really feel like I've settled on at least 5 or so lists that are good enough to have a nice positive win rate, help you climb that ladder, and today is going to be the start of that kind of mini series, if you will. So this is a list that you've probably run into at least versions or variations of a lot on the ladder. It's been very popular. And this is going to be the Bilgewater and Demacia Scout base list. I'm going to go through the ones that I run as far as like card choices, because most of these are very, very similar, but there's some flex spots where people kind of change things in and out, and I want to talk about what I run and why I run it. So right out of the gate, Fleet Feather Tracker and Jagged Butcher. I think that these are the best one drops respectively for each of these regions. Fleet Feather has a lot of utility with its Challenger. Early in the game, you can use it to trade with other units. Late in the game, it's a one drop that doesn't punish you too much, because if you activate Challenger, you can use it to kind of eat an important blocker to let your higher damage units get through. Similarly, Jagged Butcher is one of those cards that doesn't punish you if you draw it too late, because it's still a 3/3, and paying 1 for a 3/3 is not really ever a bad thing. Now, it is possible late in the game you can't trigger the Plunder, but even still, this is at worst a Cythria, and this is a deck that would probably run Cythria if it was going to be a mono Demacia list, but we get the benefit of Bilgewater, so we get Jagged Butcher. Now, the other one drop here is Ranger's Resolve. I'm currently at a 2 of. If you want to run 3 of these, I'm also not going to judge you. This card is bonkers. There are, I don't know, like a million ways in the current meta to deal 1 damage to units, whether it's a single target thing like Vile Feast, whether it's a AoE effect, something like Withering Wail, or things that are pseudo AoE like Make It Rain, for example. There's just a lot of ways for 1 damage to get thrown your way. Even Misfortune adds to that. Ranger's Resolve is just a very cheap and cost-effective way to protect your entire squad against something that could be devastating. If you're playing against Karmalists, for example, this is a great way to stop Static Shock. The uses of this go on and on. It's almost never useless. Almost never useless. Even worst case scenario, it's a combat trick. You know, a chainmail on your squad for 1 combat for 1 is very, very good. 2 drops. Bright Steel Protector. The barrier is great. Again, this is one of those early game drops that maintains its usefulness the later the game goes. Same can be said for Hired Gun. So this itself doesn't have Challenger, but just granting something else vulnerable kind of is the same as giving somebody on your squad Challenger, or at least for a round, and the 2/3 stat line is not to be scoffed at. Now, the nice thing about this is that if you do draw it late game, because it always hits the strongest enemy, very often that's the one that you also want to move away from your best attackers, because later in the game you're probably trying to push for lethal. So this kind of makes it so that you can take any unit on your squad and turn them into a Fleet Feather, because with the way vulnerable works, any unit can challenge it. So this is a very useful card, and it's been growing on me. Currently 2 single combats. If there was 1 card I really wish I could jam 1 more in, it would probably be this, because it's the closest thing to removal that you have. However, this is a really tight list, and I'm already not running everything that I want to run. So it's currently at a 2. Again, much like Ranger's Resolve, this card is bonkers. So if you want to jam in a 3rd at the expense of something else, I'm not going to judge you. I'm sure I will do it at some point. I just don't know for what. And then the War Chefs. Again, just very quality, nice 2-drop. Very good at following up your, Fleet Feather Tracker, for example, because if they don't play anything on 1, but then on turn 2, they play something that ends up being a 2/3 as opposed to a 3/2. If you follow up on your turn 2 with War Chefs, that means this can still trade into the 2/3. And ultimately, that's really what you want for Fleet Feather. You either want it to soak their best blocker late game so that you can push for lethal, or you want this to trade into something that costs more than it, right? So you gain mana tempo in that regard. You gain value, and War Chefs, they help with that. So, all right, Loyal Badger Bear. Card is just good. When it was revealed, I thought it was only going to be created by Grizzled Ranger, because a 4/4 for 3 in Demacia, no less, felt like a pipe dream. But no, it's a real thing. And you just run it because it's a heap of stats. If you're coming from the Elder Scrolls Legends, This is your Young Mammoth, and if you remember the Elder Scrolls Legends, Young Mammoth was meta from the start of the game all the way through the game. It might even still be meta now. I know that technically the servers are still on, but the card was insane. So this is that. Next up, we have Misfortune. This is really the entire reason that you run Bilgewater with the scout list. I mean, yes, there are other scouts in Bilgewater. In fact, we're not even running all of them. I would love to, for example, be able to jam in some Razor Scale Hunters, but again, this list is very, very tight. If I was going to jam them in, it would be at the expense of Island Navigator. I go back and forth on these two from time to time. The only reason that I'm not running these as opposed to these is this creates multiple bodies, so you get more benefit from the scout. But ultimately, Misfortune here, her passive ability triggers every time you attack, so putting her in lists where you have scouts means you get multiple triggers from her ability, and it also means it's going to be much easier to level her up. That's usually very, very difficult, but in a deck where you have scouts and you have Relentless Pursuit, it becomes a bit easier. But yeah, essentially she's kind of the entire reason you're running Bilgewater. Relentless Pursuit. This is in here for a couple of reasons. It's in here because obviously multiple attacks are good, but it's better on your opponent's turn, because on your turn you're probably only still going to get one bonus attack from it. The reason that Relentless Pursuit ends up being amazing in this particular list is on your opponent's turn. If you play Relentless Pursuit, that allows you to then, if you want, just attack with your scouts, and then after the scouts, because they will have reset your attack again. So when you're looking for speedy ways to level up Misfortune, Relentless Pursuit on your opponent's turn to net you 2 extra attacks is incredible at trying to get her leveled. So this card is a 3 of in my mind, just because of your ability to get 2 attacks out of it on your opponent's turn. Grizzled Ranger might be one of the most powerful cards in the game right now. It's almost always at least a 2-for-1. It is just insane. Even if somebody purifies it and then trades into it or uses something on it, it's still a 2-for-1. The fact that it is a 4-1 and it has scout, so it's threatening attacking twice, and then even if you get rid of it on the first attack, it creates the Loyal Badger Bear, which then can attack on your regular attack. Like, this thing just by itself generates such insane pressure. Island Navigator, again, we're running a lot of scouts. Again, right now I'm choosing to run this one just because it creates the second unit. Razor Scale Hunter is also entirely fine. And if you wanted to swap them or run any combination of them, I again wouldn't fault you. Quinn, much like Misfortune, kind of the entire reason to play scouts, and combining them all the better. And then at the top end, I'm currently running 2 of the Genevieve and 1 Cythria. I've seen lists that run all Cythria, lists that run all Genevieve. I'm currently running a split. I strongly believe that Genevieve is really nuts, because not only does she pump your squad, but then with Scout and Challenger, she can usually trade into something smaller and then generate additional pressure on the second attack. But I think that it's a mistake to not run at least 1 Cythria. And again, if you run the version that runs all 3, I don't blame you, because Cythria allows for a really interesting, and if I'm being honest, kind of insane interaction with a Relentless Pursuit. So if you're not familiar, the way Scout works is that you just have to attack with only scouts, and it says the first time that you do that on a turn, it resets your attack. Doesn't mean that it has to be your first attack. So you can attack with everything, including Cythria, and then after that combat, use Relentless Pursuit and only attack with your scouts, and then it resets your attack, and then attack with everything again. Now, why would you want to do it in that order as opposed to scouts, everything, everything? Well, because that means that the Cythria effect applied on the first attack and then again on the third, but getting it at least on the first means that you get the +1/+1 and the fearsome for that first attack. Now, the fearsome is relevant because after your Relentless Pursuit and you're attacking with just your scout units for the second one to trigger the third attack, there's a strong chance that they might not have enough blockers to deal with that. So applying that effect first is very relevant. Again, it's a very specific interaction with this deck, but it's incredibly powerful when you pull it off. So I think that all versions of this deck should run at least one Cytherea, if not the full complement. I've had a really hard time giving up Genevieve to go for the full 3 Cytherea switch because Genevieve has been incredibly powerful for me as well. So right now I'm running a mix. But that is the deck list, and as always, we're going to go ahead and jump into a game so you can see how the deck performs, get an idea for what it's going to do, and we're going to do that now. My apologies. I was tripping over my words during the intro, and it's because I haven't had my coffee yet. So I thought, hey, I should probably fix that. We'd really like to find a 1-drop, but the rest of this is pretty good here. So we're up against Vi. Oh, and now we find you. You son of a fleet feather. We have to assume this is going to be a control-oriented list. They're running the 2 challenger units that also serve as win conditions. Yeah, Eye of the Dragon. So expect a lot of spells. Expect a lot of them just controlling the battlefield. This is going to be a bit of an uphill climb if I was a gambling man. It also means that there's a strong chance Misfortune is not safe sitting on the back line in this matchup. But I think you still take the opportunity to develop her.
I fight with my spirit, not my fists.
All right, that's really good for them. This card, let me tell you about Eye of the Dragon. I think this card is one of the most powerful new cards that was printed. Grizzled Ranger is certainly up there, but Eye of the Dragon is also up there. The amount of things that this does for costing 2 is kind of absurd. The 1/3 stat line is respectable. The fact that it has a tune means that it really has like a net cost of 1, maybe 1.5, and then it also generates the ability for you to heal, like waiting for the other spell. Like there's gonna be another spell here because then they also get to make 2 dragonlings, which, as I was saying before, is just kind of dumb. Like it's enough to potentially, oh wow, they didn't do it. If they played a second spell there was a strong chance that we were just simply not attacking this round, like at all. But now we can be a little bit more flexible. We'd love to develop this so that we can get 2 attacks out of Misfortune, but it's not really in our cards. I think we're gonna do that, and then the Badger Bear. Badger Bear is gonna end up dying to this, in all likelihood, because I expect them to have something for 2 here that stops it. But we're gonna do this. So the idea is hopefully that this makes it big enough to survive here. This also, unless they have some sort of combat trick, will die before this hits it because of the MF ability. And if they take this block here, this also means they trade. So like the ideal was to simply give them unfavorable trades as best we could. Because again, with double Eye of the Dragon here, we are in a world of hurt. So they're going to try to set themselves up for healing most of this back next turn.
Hear your heart, let your instincts speak.
Eyes bigger.
Breathe in, breathe out.
All right, we're gonna take a gamble, I think, because if we can prevent the healing, it's a big deal. And it looks like we got insanely lucky. We are hitting exactly the 3 things we would have preferred to hit. I mean, getting some incidental damage here isn't the end of the world, because then we can maybe make a trade, but... we just wanted to prevent the healing as best we could. I think we're okay with it. Like, they got rid of the fleet feather and not this, which I guess I'm overall okay with. We're gonna play this now because we had at least one of those to have vulnerable. That was part of our other problem. We couldn't play this to get rid of one of these as long as the 2 ones were still there. We could have waited till after combat, but again, we also wanted to try to prevent that healing, so...
What is gained when you declare malevolence?
Resolve is nice.
Yeah, I'm up. I got ways to find me mushrooms. Here we go.
I'm gonna try to get rid of this, I think. Means we have to play the Ranger's Resolve to telegraph it, though, or just let the trade happen. It's a bit of a tough call. But ultimately, we do need to get rid of it one way or the other. If we wait, we could try to trade into it with the Badger Bear. I think we're just gonna do it. This is a bit of a risk because they can still take us out with a Mystic Shot or something, but or they can do that as well.
We each hold a world within.
Alright, let's do it like this. Because with the toughness, if we get the bonus here, then it has to be the Wump to trade. These are annoying, but as long as our MF stays on the board on blocking rounds, they'll die before they get the chance to heal, but overall they're still doing a fantastic job of stalling us, which is really all they want to do.
Love ya.
So they're just trying to block as much damage as possible. MF is 1 away from leveling up, and then that ends up being a pretty big deal. But we do not have a relentless pursuit to get that trigger up and running. So sadly, I think we just have to let him heal here. Alright, we're gonna try this. There's a lot of ways they can disrupt this, but this gives us the best opportunity to deal with their shenanigans. Alright, so we get rid of at least one. Again, they're gonna heal. Get rid of some potential blockers, though, which is kind of nice.
Let's take this puppy for a spin.
This is actually a really close game. Oh no! We were really banking on that.
Fortune favors the bold. What is
We were
gained?
really banking on that.
Jenny? That.
This is actually a really good pickup for us as well. They've got a lot of ways to disrupt us, though. That's one of them.
Time to get rowdy.
Like that's actually kind of massive. They've got essentially 2 cards in hand, but with 6 mana. A lot of different ways they can utilize them. Alright. So there's Lee Sin, who I think might actually just outright close out the game for them. If only because this got stunned this turn.
Pleasure to see you, master.
Because it's going to start crushing us next turn, and there's not much we can do about it.
Feel the sizzle! No one goes hungry.
We might have a shot if we top deck something like a Relentless Pursuit.
Their heartbeats quicken.
Hold still! Love ya.
I mean, I have to assume that we're going to lose our either Misfortune or Genevieve. Both of those are pretty brutal to lose. The only good news is, again, they're basically down to 2 cards. They didn't get a Dragonling this turn. Man, I need to drink more coffee. Still tripping over my words here. That's not a great sign.
I fight with my spirit,
All right.
not my fists.
Our enemies would be foolish to underestimate you.
We're going to wait to play this till after Lee Sin has done whatever he's done. This is going to be a fully... Oh, well, they can still do it at burst speed, but this is going to be a fully barriered and challenged up Lee. Because I can just play the mushroom at burst. These will also make Dragonlings next turn. Which is why they're properly identifying they have to get rid of MF here. Interesting. They...
Hell of a day.
didn't do the burst, huh? Okay.
Every wave is a path.
There's a strong chance that maybe that saves us. I think they're gonna at least mushroom up because they want the Dragonlings. And then we have this very tall order.
Their pride will cost them.
All right, we're gonna try this. We're not really using the single combat yet. Because ideally, we want it to get rid of at least one of their blockers. Question now is, do we just try to go for the Lee Sin? Because this would have to be another spell that they can play. And if that's the case, you know, I think it's still worth it. I think it's worth it to try. If it's 2 straight spells, then they probably just win the game anyway, and there's not a lot we can do about it. But if we can get rid of the Lee Sin here, we have a shot.
I'm sorry.
Contain magic.
True Shot's huge! also have to not die to mushrooms, but...
Clear your head.
Let your instincts speak.
So let's go 3, 2... And we're actually going to put the 1 here because that way, even if they block one of our other units there, this would then die, which means we'll likely push more net damage because they'll leave this behind to not block. It also means that by doing this, we're only going to deal with 1 Dragonling next turn, but... So we're going to have the buff go here because this will actually restore a health to it at the end of the round. Oh, they are going to take the block. Okay, well. They could have let it go and been at 2 just to make sure they got a Dragonling, but this was a close game. This was incredibly close. Actually, there's still a chance we could lose this. We're going to take at least 2 from this, and then we have to deal with mushrooms. I don't think we play our hand yet until... Oh my lord. We actually still could lose this. Because they're chaining Shadow Assassins. We 100% could lose this right now. Alright, that's something that we can at least block.
Alright, let's mess some folks up.
It's going to come down to mushrooms. And whether or not they like top deck a Mystic Shot. I don't think we're going to end up with the Scout attack next turn. Well, yeah, we probably will. But I still think it's worth it to do this. Alright. Their EV is still technically less than 1, but we could get really unlucky. No mushrooms. Okay. If they have a Mystic Shot, we're dead to it at instant speed anyway. The only thing that's a slow speed that would kill us is maybe
Fortune favors the
like
bold.
True Shot, so I think that this is probably an okay attempt, because then if they block with this here, she kills it and our Scout unit doesn't die. It also means that we get to see this. They also could just be trolling us with this weight. And the surrender. I was gonna say they could just be trolling us and hitting us with Mystic Shot late. Holy cow, what a game. Alright. So you get an idea for what the deck's trying to do. You're trying to take advantage of as many misfortune triggers as possible. Just play your most important units. You could kind of see where the 4-drop Scout from Bilgewater can sometimes be really good, but also the lower stat line can come back to haunt you a bit, which is why, as I was saying before, I think going back and forth between her and the Hunter makes an awful lot of sense, but that's the deck. So if you made it this far, I appreciate you. Thanks for watching, and you know, if it's your first time, consider subscribing. If it's not your first time and you came back, then you know I like you more because you came back. So anyway, I love you all, and till next time.